Okay, Alice, do you want to start?
Okay, so hang on. I need to unmute myself here. Oh, I'm all right. I'm going to call the roll. Please answer here if you're here. Robert Golden,
Present?
Andy Andrews,
Here.
Patty Hatsistavrakis,
Here.
Philip Denny. Maybe he's muted.
Here.
Oh, good. And Alice Lindahl here. And now I'm asking you to, whether you approve the minutes. Answer yes if you do, no if you don't. Robert Golden,
Yes.
Andy Andrews,
Yes.
Patty Hatsistavrakis,
Yes.
Philip Denny,
Yes.
and Alice Lindahl. First on our agenda.
Okay, well, Alice, I'll take it from
Okay.
here.
Okay.
So before we go to members' comments, I just would like to read a statement. We want to update everyone on the status of the Bandman lawsuit filed against certain LCA board members and former board members. Yesterday, the court dismissed Kayla Bandman, Valerie Bandman, Ross Stanek, and Marion Farrell as plaintiffs, finding they had no standing or authority to bring this lawsuit. The judge allowed LCA Director Phil Denny to proceed as the sole plaintiff since his name was later added by plaintiff's lawyers. The court found the original and first amended complaints were defective for different legal reasons, and that the original plaintiffs, Kayla Bandman, Valerie Bandman, Ross Stanek, and Marion Farrell, were not entitled to sue the LCA. The court allowed Director Denny, should he choose to continue with this litigation, to file another amended complaint, naming the LCA as a defendant. This is necessary because some of the claims Mr. Denny is asserting impacts the rights of the LCA as a corporate entity. If Mr. Denny chooses to file a new complaint, the defendants and LCA will have 20 days to answer or otherwise respond. We will keep everyone updated on any future developments. Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to turn to members' comments. And as usual, we have 3 minutes to state questions, raise
The
points.
judge
etc.
dismissed all of the plaintiffs except Phil Denny. No one else had standing to bring.
Excuse me. Okay. So if you want to make a comment, again, 3 minutes, please go down to the participants window and it says raise your hand, raise hand. I'll call on you and unmute you. Okay, Jim Penny, you're first. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute.
Right.
I've got several items, but I think they'll probably come up on a list. Can you give an update on the status of the mailing out of the ballots for the election next month? When will they go out?
Well, so why don't we'll take a list of these questions and I'll respond. Okay. Okay. In fact, I believe Phil Denny will respond to that question.
Okay. Also, hopefully we'll get in this meeting an update on the status of the roads, particularly the grant, which appears to have an expiration date of June 30th. And I assume, or at least I hope, because the monies have to be returned, if in fact the money's not spent by June 30th, at least according to the grant documents. So can you guys give an update on that? I'd hate to have to return the money. Okay. Similar with the SBA loan, by the way, it doesn't have a deadline, but what's the status of the SBA loan? And the other things I think are on the agenda. Oh, I would like to, by the way, just very quickly, last meeting ended with all kinds of thanks for everybody doing everything, except There was no mention of the fact that Phil Denny saved the association $27,000 by getting the transmission on the truck repaired, as opposed to going out and spending the otherwise voted and approved $30,000 for a new truck. And in my interplay back and forth with Michael, he loves having the truck back and it's working fabulously.
Jim, thank you very much. Next person up is Richard Skidmore, and on deck is Rusty. Richard, go ahead.
Hello, I would just note that the minutes you just approved for the January meeting show that in that meeting, the minutes from November 12th were approved, when in fact it was the minutes from December 10th. So that's an error.
Thank you. You can,
The,
I'll fix it.
In last month's meeting, I submitted comments, or after the meeting, I submitted comments and questions as requested regarding the engineering fee proposal that was posted. By the way, incorrectly posted as an engineering report. And twice I submitted the questions and twice I received no response other than Robert indicating that my questions would be answered in tonight's meeting. So accordingly, I request to be recognized after the board's discussion tonight on the engineering proposal as required by 421.5J, that members may participate in any deliberation or discussion regarding that agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Rusty is next. Heather, you're on deck.
It's me. Hi, this is Robin. Can you hear me?
Oh, Robin, okay.
Yeah. Hey. I would like to comment on the recent damage that has occurred to Fissure 8. Within the last 2 weeks, Jeff and I have witnessed 3 different recreational vehicles enter the Fissure 8 area and tear it up. There's already a big scar across one side of the fissure from a 4-wheeler. I believe that the very least we can do as a community now is to keep recreational vehicles away from the fissure and surrounding areas to prevent irreparable damage. The vehicles also create, as was mentioned in a previous meeting, the vehicles also create airborne volcanic dust, which is known to damage lungs. It's caught by the wind and it blows into our yards and it blows into our houses. For these reasons, we are in favor of a policy from our board of directors, which will both protect Fissure 8 and at the same time will eliminate the volcanic air pollution. Also, I would support the formation in the agenda. I see there's a mention of forming a committee on lava area management, and I would definitely support that. Finally, I'd just like to state the obvious. Fissure 8 is worthy of preservation. It has historical, scientific, cultural, and educational value. And it has become an icon. This goes beyond Leilani Estates, beyond the state of Hawaii, beyond the mainland. There are places around the world that know about Fissure 8. Personally, I also think of Fissure 8 as a kind of memorial to be preserved. It's a beautiful light at the end of a very dark tunnel of loss and hardship. That's the end of my remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. Next is Heather.
Aloha. I was just hoping that we could hear perhaps more at some point about updates on the pig and the ungulate control in the neighborhood. I see that you have some mention of that in the previous meeting, but Just wondering if there's any plan to bring that back up in tonight's meeting.
Heather, I didn't understand the word you said. Control of.
Ungulate.
It's a scientific term, I think, for pigs.
Pigs.
Andy.
Oh, pigs. Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
That's usually what the state uses, right? They're formal.
Robert, would you like me to answer this and get it out of the way?
Yes,
right
go
away?
ahead, Alice. Yes.
I have been contacted by a group of college students who have a club where they go to subdivisions and take out pigs. And they require that adjacent lots sign up with them. They do it for free, of course, and take all the stuff away, but they are anxious to come and do it. So you would just need to get your neighbors. And since I'm your next door neighbor, we will sign in right away. We hate the pigs. And they said it would be good to have at least 4 contiguous lots, because when they chase the pigs around, they don't want to chase them onto somebody's lot who didn't want them there. That's the story. So I'll get together with you and give you that phone number and we'll call them up together.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Heather. So does anyone else want to make a comment at this time? And just to reiterate, Jim, your comments, and Richard, your questions will be answered during the meeting. And if you're not satisfied, just that you just chat me and I'll put you on and we can resolve those issues, okay? Okay. All right. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Let's move on. I have no more comments to make. So Alice, why don't you continue with calling people to speak?
Okay. Next are reports of officers and committee chairs, and you have no more further comments, right? Okay,
No.
so the next is Andy Andrews. Have something to say about the Treasury? Yes.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. As usual, the January 2021 income statement and balance sheet are posted on the LCA website for your view and pleasure. Of course, next month, there will be a year-end report that's done. As probably those of you with a financial background know, because our fiscal year ends on March the 30th and the meeting is on March the 20th, we can't actually generate a year-end report because you can't generate a report before the date that the report. So what will be submitted at the meeting next month will be a incomplete year-end report, and then the final year-end report will be generated by whomever is named as the treasurer by on the new board after the election. Thank you.
That's it. Next on the agenda is the secretary's report. And I have 2 things to mention. On January 29th, 5 LCA members, that is 2 board members and 3 community members, had a Zoom meeting with the mayor and the 2 department heads that covering planning and public works. And our hope was to mainly to establish a nice one-to-one communication with the county mayor's office, which we have not had in the recent past. And the idea is that there's going to be a new culture in the mayor's office and they want to work with communities. And so no better time for us to talk with them about what the plan is for the lava covered areas in the Kilauea recovery plan. But also we always seem to be kind of at odds with the information system down there to understand whether or not there are what permits are required and for any changes made in people's properties. And of course, we have now the discussion of the possibility of putting homes on the lava covered area. And so I did get one positive message back from Iakaka Rodenhurst, and he said at the very beginning of the as soon as the eruption was over, there was a moratorium on any kind of building. And we didn't know if that had ever been lifted or not. And he said, at the present time, they aren't turning anybody down for making a application to build a house, but that they would be determined, especially in our area, on a case-by-case basis, as they're aware of a lot of lava tubes in there. And he encouraged us as a community to get some engineering studies and risk assessments of the areas that people want to build, because they know that there's still a lot of volcanic activity out there in certain spots. So that was helpful. And we also met a really nice person named Cyrus Johansson. He's the public information officer, and he seemed eager to talk to us. He said he had the ear of the mayor better than anybody, and he's encouraging us to look into some natural resource preservation options that the county has to help people preserve natural phenomena, you know, such as our fissure system. So we'll be definitely talking to them about that and making an appointment. So it was a success, although the only disappointment was that Mitch Roth himself is still at home convalescing, and so it wasn't like they could change direction or make any new ideas happen without him there. But all in all, I felt good about meeting those guys. So that's my report. And I also have a seeker report, and you guys are going to have to bear with me. I'm a former professor who used to use PowerPoint all the time. I'm going to do part of it with a little visual images. To start out with, this month, Seeker has been putting postings on Nextdoor of derelict cars from the local place where derelict cars are stashed, because it is illegal to move a derelict car from one place to another. And we now have about 14 verified sightings of them being in this one junkyard and then transported to someone else's property. And so I put it on Nextdoor thinking, well, you know, people like to look at cars, and we got quite a bit of feedback, including from the people who were doing the dumping of the cars. And she stopped me on the road and said, you know, that one car wasn't really a derelict. She said, we took that back and put it somewhere else, and so that's not a derelict. And they immediately got rid of another derelict car, so I took that one off and posted it. So now we have kind of communication with them, which is good. You know, overall, she was kind of friendly about it. Let's see. We got the message from people living on Cupono Street that there was a four-wheeler doing wheelies on the west and northwest slopes of Fissure 8. And one thing that we are dealing with the open roads and the open access to the interior there is understanding how many different places off-road vehicles, which are fun running in the tephra around Fissure 8, where they're coming from. And when you stand at the end of Leilani Avenue and look out, you can see the top scars of what they've done, but you can't see where they came from because that's out of sight. So if you'll bear with me here, Robert and I have figured out a way to, for me to, let's see here, to show you what we found when we went out to try to figure out how those, how those recreational vehicles are getting into that site. And let's see if this guy will open correctly. So we walked in around Chris Burmeister's place. Oh wait, to start out with, the thing that one of the reasons we were informed that this was important is that since there is now no longer a gate on Luana Street and no signs, because the barricade was taken and all the signs were taken down. So it's pretty well established that signs and gates will discourage people from going in. So there'll be fewer. It won't get rid of everybody, but we can cut down on the numbers and we can make it really hard for a vehicle to get in. So this is what all of the lava covered streets looked like. In this particular street, the person who lives closest says they have had absolutely no traffic there at all. But here's what it looks like on Luana Street, which is actually kind of inviting to people. There are no signs. There's no evidence of danger. There's no reason. A lot of people see why not to go down there. So the board is going to be addressing that problem tonight. And I'm going to talk about it later. But I thought it might be instructive to show you how we found out where that RV was coming from. Here's what it looked like from the end of Luana Street through a pair of binoculars. You could see the really deep tire tracks all the way up to the ridge. And when you look below that site, those other gouges are up in this way. Can you guys see my little arrow okay? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, but all the wheelies and stuff were done here in the bottom. And even though this is a pretty good vantage point, we could see tracks going off that way and tracks going off that way. So I went this direction thinking, are they getting on Nohea Street? And all the tracks turned out to be dead end up against thick lava on that side. I couldn't find anything on Cupono or Nohea Street that indicated that these vehicles had been there. And here's a little kind of close up. Their tire tracks of one in particular that seems to have come back many times are really distinctive, and they're the same as these ones down here. So the only other possibility seemed to be Luana Street, but there are the fissures. You have to cross the fissure line up here. And so we just went down Luana Street to see if we could get to that spot. And oh wait, here's the actual four-wheeler in action there up on the west flank of Fissure 8. This picture was taken by Chris Burmeister. He gave it to me. It's not very easy to see. The other thing that if you haven't been out to this area walking around, the pumice area is very soft. So even a person's foot will sink way in, and the pumice is not uniform down there. There are lots of air pockets and things. And this shows a tire track right next to the footprint. And we thought we would try to follow these particular tire tracks that we've been thinking of. So we walked down Luana Street. And when you get past the part where they took all of the boulders and scraped them off and put them on the side of the road, the kind of dense lava part that was at the beginning, keeping anybody from going in. If you get just barely past that, you can make out kind of a little trail here. So we went down that trail, and sure enough, it's packed with great big, huge, the exact same tire treads that we saw in the other place, but there are lots and lots of them. So there's many comings and goings of these vehicles. And I don't remember ever spotting those before, but I haven't spent a lot of time there, so I can't really say. But you can see they're headed straight for the most delicate and easily damaged part of the fissure system, and that is all these intricate fissures that are west of Fissure 8. And in between them, there's thermal areas and lots of little gaps with hot spots. And so I'm thinking, this is not a very good place for a trail. And if you go down it a ways, it goes up and over these things, and there are a lot of little sinkholes here, and it works its way across this long line of fissures. And then it leaves the fissures behind and goes into this big bowl. And over this ridge right here is where we saw all the spider web of tracks that you saw before. So if we keep going on this thing and following the track lines, they finally come to a place where they come out and do the climbing of the fissure. So you can follow individual tracks from Luana. So at least some of them are coming out down Luana Street, and I would like to ask the community, if you know of somewhere else where they're getting in, we'd like to find out that to see if we can block that off too. So that's my little research project there regarding this mess. And I don't go here very often, but it looked to me like all of this had been made very recently in just a few days. It doesn't take very much. I guess that's it. So that's my, and I want to thank the secret committee who helped me do that, take a look at that. Without them, I couldn't have done it. So they said, oh yeah, we'll do that. And those are their photographs that I have on there. Any questions about that from the group? Anybody have any comments or anything you want to add to that? It looks like I'm the next person on
So
under.
Alice, we're going to discuss the implications of this later on in your.
Yes, right. The board has been talking about ways to protect, especially from off-road vehicles. That's a really super high priority.
Okay,
And I just thought I'd inspire everybody about the need for that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Let's see here. This is not got a thing. I have been working for
Can you hold on
several
one second?
months. Yeah.
I don't know, Jean, do you want to say something about Alice's report?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead, Jean.
Okay. You know, when Sam Estes punched that driveway through, we all asked about taking down the barriers and all forecasted that this driveway would become a through street. So I think we need some kind of policy that says people can't just punch driveways across the lava and open up places like this that haven't been open before. It was very predictable this would happen. So I don't know who said Sam could do that and not put up a gate or, you know, not control the traffic, but that was a mistake. And I don't begrudge him the driveway because he's got property there. But like the people that did it at the end of Malama, they put a big gate down there to help control the traffic and said no trespassing. This is an open invitation, like this is Luana Street, so let's just go for it because there's nothing there. And yeah, so it was predictable. It was going to happen, and we said so at the time. So I think we need a policy that says if you punch a driveway through, you control the traffic.
Well, we do have a policy in place, which was written in August 28th of 2020, forbidding anyone from taking, or we didn't put it that way, establishing that barricades should stay up on all roads and no roads could be graded without permission from the LCA, and that policy was not honored.
It was not enforced. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we didn't have an option.
Okay, so we have Robin wants to ask Alice to speak on this point, I believe. Robin?
Yeah, hey, this is Jeff, Robert.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as the ATVs, I've seen them come in on 2 occasions from the north end of Nohea Street. They drive across Leilani and then in front of Chris Burmeister's lot down Nohea, and then they enter the lava area there too. So besides Nohea, and if you go out there, you can see those tire tracks, and you can see the tire tracks where they go around the barrier at the end of Nohea.
We walked out there. I didn't see any tracks. The lava looks just so forbidding there, but they can maybe get over that really rough stuff.
Yeah, if you look, you can see the tracks. I walk that almost every day. And like I say, I've seen them do that twice.
Maybe sometime you could come down there and meet me down there and show me exactly where it is.
Okay.
So
yeah, that'd be easy.
Because our little research team was there, but we couldn't find anything.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that'd be good.
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. Alice, you want to move on to
okay, this is the CCNR report. Late last summer in July, I spoke with our attorney, Lincoln Ashita, about ways that we could get our very, very resistant CCNR long-term violation areas off of our books and cleaning up those places in our community that are such an eyesore. And he sat down with me and with one other board member, and he went over the legal justification for, or the legal process whereby a community could create a fine structure. And he emphasized that the most important thing was that a board member itself, the person can't just make up the fines themselves, the amounts of the fines and the process by which they are how often they can be administered and that sort of thing. And so he said you have to have a committee of members working independently from you after you give them instructions, and they come up with the fine structure. And then they submit it to the board for their approval, and the board would have final say on whether or not they thought it was a good recommendation, or they might find a few things that they would want to tweak. But he said you should be hands off until the time that it gets presented to the board. And that document was presented last month, and I am bringing it up again for approval from the board now that they have had time to look at it. And in fact, several board members, with the consent of others, have made a few changes on it. And so I'm asking the board to finalize it. And I would like to make, maybe just for those of you who weren't at the last meeting when I talked about this in detail, the fines that are the worst are the ones for the two violation CCNRs, which are nuisances. There's the nuisance of behavior, you know, wild parties, having a chop shop, making a lot of noise, running a generator all night, having a really, you know, I don't know, that sort of stuff is very hard on a neighborhood. But also hard on the neighborhood is a place that looks like a junkyard, and junk just keeps accumulating over and over. And those are very disrespectful people who are doing that. And disrespectful people, they don't respond to letters asking politely to do the right thing. And so this is our one big chance to see if this works. And the fine structure that was recommended is a quarter of what the county puts out. The county suggests for someone having a big, ugly, smelly, noisy junkyard should start out at $100 per day. And that adds up, as you can imagine, very quickly into a really big fine. And then the county can take, can foreclose on a property. I don't know how often they actually do it, but that's what it is on the books. And so no actual money ever changes hands. The fact that the person owes money means that a lien can be put on their property. So for us, we came up with the idea of the worst case scenario in Leilani. A person for the first 3 months would pay $25 a day fine for not cleaning up the junk. First, they're given a month to clean up the junk, and then if they don't do it, then the fines start. And 4 to 6 months, it goes up to $50 a day. 7 to 9 months, it goes up to $75 a day. And at 9 to 12 months, $100 per day. And that adds up to enough money to really get somebody's attention. And I think that the idea of the possibility of a foreclosure is the only incentive we have that somebody might listen to. That is, they don't want to lose their place. So at that point, we hope they become more cooperative. And also at that point, we negotiate with them. If you clean up, you will not have to pay this, these fines that have been accumulating. And, but, now there are enough of them that we could foreclose on your property if we wanted to. So that's the basic plan. And it's taken a long time to get it to this point, but Lincoln said that that's required. They want you to think about it a lot before you set up a fine structure. And we only did it for the several CCNRs for which people tend to be really, really, really resistant to paying attention and paying for them. Are there any questions from the board about going ahead with the motion before I quit talking too much?
Alice, I have something. This is Andy.
Uh-huh.
First of all, a big thanks to first your committee and to you for all the legwork that you've done. I know that a lot of people have put a lot of time and thought into this, and so thanks for that. I believe I agree with you when you say that the people who are the most flagrant violators, the likelihood of them responding to a fine is almost nil. That these are people that that's not in their vocabulary. In fact, many of those same people, as you and I know, currently owe very large back dues to the LCA. And even though we have liens in place, liens have really no efficacy at all because many of those folks are intending to live on their property probably until they die. And so a lien. So following that thought, the only real opportunity to realize any outcome is foreclosure. And the LCA, I've looked, and it appears the LCA did do some foreclosures in the past, but it's been a long time. I actually wasn't able to find any real documentation on it. It's probably there, but it's probably pretty buried in some old banker boxes. But where I'm going with this is, I believe that an important thing for the LCA to do would be to create a criteria for foreclosure. And it would probably need to be set at a dollar amount, at which point the LCA would begin the foreclosure proceedings. There's a fairly high cost to foreclosure in terms of the legal cost. And then there's also a time period that it has to go through. And so I suggest that the committee or whomever is going to be the administrator of this begin right now to do the legwork to find out how foreclosure would happen, at what bar the LCA would initiate the foreclosure, and so that when those dollar amounts are reached, we're ready to move forward. Thank you.
Lincoln, when we first talked to him, said he has managed many foreclosures in his law office, but that's what they do. They're homeowner. They work for homeowner associations.
Jean Graham, I think, has a comment to make.
Okay.
Jean?
Yeah, I just have a question. So Leilani Estates is allowed to foreclose on individual properties in the subdivision? Is that right? Is that a legal right?
Yeah. Well, under extreme circumstances, of course, they would much rather have the person stay in their home and be functional.
But Alice,
Yeah,
the short answer is yes. The short answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. Is foreclosure allowed on properties that have an enormous amount of unpaid dues? Is that a reason to foreclose?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the only legal remedy for people who do not pay their dues? Otherwise, we have no say? No legal recourse?
Jean, as I said, we have placed liens, and in fact have many liens in place at this time. Liens up until a few years ago, I don't know exactly when, in Hawaii, never expired. So once you placed the lien stayed in place until it was relieved. The laws changed a while back, and liens expire after 6 years. So we would have to review all of the liens, and we would have to renew them if we wanted them in place. But as long as the resident stays on that property and there's no transfer of the property, a lien enforcement has no teeth. If they sell the property, the LCA often has the lien relieved by the sale. But another workaround that's used often is if the property goes into foreclosure, if the owner simply fails to make the payments on the property, the banks that take over the foreclosure proceedings have only a very limited liability for the relief of the lien. The vast majority of the liens are lost. The monies are lost, and the lot gets a new lease on life with no monies owed.
Yeah, I realize liens are a very useless way of trying to pressure or leverage anybody into making up payments on anything.
Correct.
So would our best choice be to try to foreclose on properties where people are really behind on payments or operating a junkyard? Can we do that? Foreclose?
Yes.
Lincoln says he does it all the time.
That would be great, because
he said it's very important that you have followed all the rules very carefully for setting up the fine structure. Right. And obviously the point of foreclosure is important too. But I might point out that this fine structure that I just described to you would build up a much bigger debt much faster than the dues, because especially in the old days when the dues were only $100 a whole year, it would take really a long time to get into the thousands. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good plan. If you can rack up enough debt against these people that foreclose, that would be fabulous. I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any chance that any of these guys are going to move out or move on or try to sell their properties. And a lien is totally useless against places like on Maile and Malama Street. Those places are just basically, they would be improved by a bulldozer. You know, those people are not going to move or change. So putting a lien on it's useless. So yeah, your plan sounds, if it works, that would be great.
Well, it hasn't been tried, and after all these many years of fighting this fight, we thought it was important to try something new and see if we can make it work.
Alice, do you want to call?
I agree.
Alice, do you want to call the question?
I'd like to make the motion that we accept the fine structure as described on the document sent to everybody, and as modified by Andy a little bit, and that that's a real simple motion. And so I will call for any discussion. How about a second? I really kind of like the idea of having seconds.
I'll make a second, and then I'll open the discussion just with a question. Alice, this is you have this all posted on the LCA website and have had it there for all of the membership to see. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, I'll have you guys vote. Robert Golden?
Yes.
Andy Andrews?
Yes.
Patty Hatzistavarakis?
Yes.
Philip Denny?
No.
Okay. Alice Lindahl? Yes, so that's 4 yeses, 1 no, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Alice, very much for that.
And I'll be letting you know very soon, because I have a stack of letters on my desk that are all the way at the end of begging and asking. So they'll go out next. Okay, let's see here. Who's next? Next, Andy is going to talking about the reserve study and
Thank
several
you,
other
Ellen.
issues. Mhm.
Okay,
Under old
thank you.
business.
Robert, I'd like to ask permission to switch around the agenda items just because my third one, the entrance signs, is a fairly short, and
Okay, fine.
and then we'll come to the others.
Great.
So starting to that first item, the Leilani Estates entrance signs, I gave a report last meeting that I had spoken to a sign maker in Hilo, and I had said that he had given me a quote of $218 a sign, and the board said, let's go for it. And I went to that sign maker in Hilo and said, we're ready to go. And he said, oh, I made a mistake on the bid. They're actually going to be $740 per sign. And so I suggest that we neither go with that sign maker simply out of not being able to trust them. They probably, when we go to pick up the signs, it'll be yet another price. So anyway, I've explored two possibilities. I explored three. I spoke to another sign maker over on the Kona side, and he also was fairly expensive. He gave me a $500 to $700 range on the signs. So I started to explore two other possibilities. The first is, for those of you who are familiar with it, the national parks have an incredibly wonderful signing method they use. They actually have a company in Texas make phenolic signs with a screen printed top on them. And they do them all now with computer graphics. And they would do two signs for us of that same quality, that same wonderful national park quality. Both signs would cost $640. They would probably, their estimation is they would last with no fading for at least 10 years, and that they would be extremely weatherproof, as in the national parks. The only downside of it is they come from Texas. And so it would take us 8 weeks by the time they make the sign and ship the sign to us. So that's one option. But then the second option, which would be much faster, is the same outfit that made our signs for the community center. They're a company in Utah, and they're an online presence. They're very fast, but they would be a much flimsier sign. They do them on 080 gauge aluminum. And my only concern of putting a sign like that up at the street is that it would get stolen, that it would get ripped off of the bolts or whatever we put it in with, and it would just get ripped off the street. The upside of it is those signs would only cost, even with the shipping from Utah, the total cost on those signs would probably be something in the $300 to $400 range. And the other upside of it is if we were to give them the order tomorrow, they would ship, well, tomorrow's Friday. If we were to give them this order on a day other than Friday, they would ship it the very next day, and they'd ship it UPS second day air. So my thought is that we go with those aluminum signs and get them here and get them up. The poor stone barrier at the street looks so sad and lonely with no sign on it. It just makes me sad to drive by it. And I thought they do a beautiful job. The signs, in terms of the graphics, they're just wonderful. I have a very high quality photograph of our past signs that fell apart, and they could work off of that photograph. So I'm proposing that we give it a shot and bring in those signs. And it's not cheap, but it's not a ton of money. And I have a feeling they're going to work and actually look quite good. And so it isn't enough money that the board has to vote on it, because it's well below our $2,500 procurement requirement for a vote. But I would like to open it to the board or anyone else for comments to see if there's some thought that might be a good path forward to get us some nice signs out there quickly.
Andy, so thank you for doing that research, the legwork. Jim Penny raised his hand. Jim?
Yes, my only comment is, and I support Andy's latter recommendation too, and I think we can attach it as strongly as possible at least. But could we possibly make them larger? Even twice as big would be good. My only complaint about the previous signs is they were small, and if you didn't expect it while you're driving down the road, it just didn't say Leilani quickly enough for people to recognize.
Yeah, Jim, it's this is going to be a yes/no answer. Yes, we could make them bigger. However, if we go bigger than 3 feet in any one dimension, shipping skyrockets. Because at 3 feet, they can ship it UPS. At 4 feet, they have to ship it freight, and everything changes. But there is an option, which I've thought of, which is make 2 signs for each side and make them so that they create a contiguous message and put them side by side. And we'd probably at that point need to mount them onto a sheet of plywood to get them so that they stayed. But I think that it could be done in such a way that the 2 signs could be give the appearance of a single sign if we do it carefully. My other thought on that is that coming from the opposite direction, coming from Kalapana, I think we'd be fine with a small sign because very little of the traffic comes in that direction. So what we'd have to buy is 3 signs rather than 2 signs. But I certainly would be thinking that it would be worth the chance that it'll turn out nicely.
Okay, Heather, you're next.
Hello, sorry. I just wanted to see if it didn't sound like we had any local options for the signage making, and it's not clear to me if we just don't have companies that do that locally or if those weren't looked into.
Yeah, Heather, those are the 2 companies that I mentioned, the one in Hilo and the one on the Kona side, both local companies, significantly more expensive. And the one in Hilo, I felt scammed on us. And when I said, yeah, let's go ahead with the project, the price suddenly changed dramatically. And at least for me, that's a complete non-starter with a company, that if they give me one quote and then amend it when I'm ready to write the check, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I apologize. I missed that.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, but yes, we did explore buying it on island first. Yes.
Okay. And the other thing was the lighting, right? So like we spend a lot of effort on making the signs, but in the evening time, you know, it's really hard. I mean, even when we had the sign originally, to see that in the evening time. So I don't know if there's any consideration for lighting that will come at the time.
Yeah, I did see where Robert put in a request to the county that we would get a street sign, we would get a street light, we would get a flashing yellow light in one direction and a flashing red light at the top of Leilani Avenue, since we've had several people die at that intersection over the last few years. And so I think that's in the hands of the county and the state right now for us to get that. For us to run lighting up there, there'd be 2 options. One would be is we'd have to run an electric service off of the pole, which would be pretty expensive just to light up our sign. There are solar powered options that we could put up there. I'd bet, I hate to say it, maybe I'm being pessimistic, I think if we put a really nice solar powered sign up there, it would last about 3 hours before it was stolen. Light, I mean, not sign.
Andy, I have a question for you. In terms of your lead-in, in terms of the option of the national park signage,
yes,
I had a sense that that was going to be a pretty permanent sign. How long do you think that sign actually would last?
You mean the aluminum sign?
No, well, the one made by Texas.
Yeah, got you. Let me answer both of those. The people who make the aluminum sign very confidently guarantee their sign to have no fading for 5 years. Our Leilani logo doesn't use what's called fugitive colors. Fugitive colors in sign making are reds and yellows and pinks. Blue is a pretty stable color. And so our nice old-fashioned 1960s style Leilani sign, which by the way, I just love, I think that's a lovely design, that same sign, I think would hold up, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And I feel confident that if it doesn't hold up for 10 years, that I probably won't be around to take the blame for it anyway. And the second part is the Texas sign, like I said, they put them in the national parks, and the national parks set a pretty high bar for longevity and permanence. So, but they guarantee their sign for 10 years, and likelihood is it would hold up significantly longer than that.
Right. I just personally felt a sort of gravitas with the national park signage that I think would do us well. I personally wouldn't mind waiting 8 weeks to see something that would be there so permanently. That's my only point of view.
Going back to what Jim Penny said, the national park signs would be smaller. They would be on a par with the signs that we've already had in the past. Okay. And I tend to agree. In fact, actually, when I was doing the signage for the community center, I did design a sign for the street, which was just going to be a replacement for the sign that was there. And then, as you remember, somebody went up and did a little touch-up paint on that sign and bought it a few more months of life. The wood was already rotten at that time, but oh well, it worked for a while. And my original thought way back then was that we need a bigger sign.
Okay, thank you. Heather, did you have one last comment to make? Because we have to move on.
Totally random, maybe not possible, but I know that the sign actually looked really nice. I think it was Sarah that had touched it up. There are people here that do epoxy with wood mixtures, and so I don't know if it'd be possible as a solution to just epoxy the old sign after letting it dry and putting that up.
The old sign crumbled into pieces.
Okay, never mind.
The wood was just genuinely rotten.
All right. And do you want to have a vote on this?
No. If nobody has any objection, I'm just going to go ahead with the metal sign, and I'll get it ordered here in the next little bit, and we'll see how it holds up.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have two, as everyone can see, I have two more items to discuss. I'm going to just work my way up the order in reverse order. So the second item is the engineering proposal. I gave the history on it at the last meeting, that we got 2 engineering proposals, one of them from Engineering Partners and the other from Okahara. The Engineering Partners, I won't say it as exhaustively as I did last time, but Jay Cherkowski worked on this, put a lot of time into it, a lot of thought, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And Jay and I, we asked for more volunteers, and we didn't get any others. So Jay and I made a decision that we felt that the Okahara was the better of the 2 proposals. It was also significantly less expensive, and we felt covered the bases well enough. So, and I posted it onto the website, and it's been up there for a month. So unless the board has any other, no, we can do discussion after. So, so I'm going to make a motion that we accept as presented the Okahara proposal. I'll ask for a second and then open the floor for discussion. Do I have a second? I like to have seconds.
Anyone? Alice, you're muted.
I can second that.
Okay, Patty just seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll open for discussion.
So Richard Skidmore wants to talk. Go ahead, Richard.
So you didn't answer any of my questions. So I'll ask them again if that's okay.
Go ahead.
What was proposed and what is posted doesn't include the fee breakdown. There's just a total of $9,000. It says see attached breakdown and there's nothing posted. That's one thing. Specifically, I asked which streets or sections of streets are included in the project. That's not posted. I asked what's the potential risk associated with proceeding without getting the county required grading permit. That's not been answered. And then besides finding the specific streets on the Kilauea Recovery Investments site, it's got the map. It also has the recovery grant application, which clearly says on the last page before the signature that any funds unused by June 30, 2021 must be returned to the County of Hawaii. So it's been like 5 months since you guys found out we were getting these monies and you haven't even submitted bids yet. Request for proposals. It's crazy. Do I get any answers or are you just gonna thank me and go on?
I didn't hear any questions. I just heard statements.
So Andy, from what I gather from what Richard said, are we in danger of losing this grant money if nothing is spent by June 30th?
The grant can be extended and the county has acknowledged that as long as we keep them apprised of it. And in fact, they've actually made a special concession for extension based upon the fact that they know that they have to finish all the work on Pohoiki Road to open up the bottom of Leilani Avenue before the LCA can contract to have that last 575 feet of Kahukai Street opened up to provide access back to the 14 lots that are sit there on the island. And so yeah, there's extension opportunities.
Okay. And Richard, in terms of the roads covered, if you've actually looked at the application, then you know what roads are being covered because it's all specified.
Would you guys?
And actually, I will tomorrow, Richard, I will have that application posted on the website.
It's actually posted, not the application, but the roads that are covered by the first phase are posted on the Kilauea Recovery Investments website.
Okay.
Okay, well then you know the answer to the question then, right?
No, you guys. So the whole point of the Kahukai, I get that. But I mean, we can't do the Kapuka, the road to the Kapuka until the county's done Pohoiki. So that's great if they've given you that extension for that part of it. And Robert calls that in his January 19th memo or email, the next phase. My questions are related to this phase. What are the potential risks? What are the potential risks for going ahead without getting the county required grading permit? And what happens if we haven't used the funds for this first phase by June 30th? Did you get an extension on that as well?
Yes.
So Richard, let me just add to that, because I've been involved with conversations with the county on this issue. They want us to use this money. They're not trying to trick us. They want us to use this money to recover the roads. This is going to serve everybody. So that's not a concern of ours. And our next step is
that. My concern is not that. My concern is why, for 5 months, you've known you're getting this money. There seems to be, in my opinion, there seems to be no sense of urgency to get this project going.
Right, I get that. I get that's your judgment. Meanwhile, we're going to vote today on the engineering firm who will take care of the next steps.
All right. I just see you turning it over to the next board is what's happening.
Well, it's true. The next board will have to manage the project. There's no doubt about that.
Robert,
just one more quick question.
Yes.
On the Malama Opuna site, it says that they're getting $10,000, but somewhere along the line, I heard they were getting 10% of the.
No, they're getting $10,000, not 10%.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, hold on, Alice.
Robert, can I make a clarification?
Yes.
Isn't it the case that we do not have the funds yet to?
No.
No, we have-
Malama-
We have not gotten the check yet.
Alice, the way that works is that we have to submit invoices each time that there is expenditures. We then submit to Malama Opuna for the disbursement of funds.
So are they dispersing now?
No,
to other
no,
people?
because we haven't spent any money yet.
All right, but to other people are doing it. I just was under the impression that they were much slower rolling out than everybody thought they would be when.
No, it's
the
all set to
proposal
go.
was made.
Everything's in
No.
place.
Okay.
Everything's in place.
Okay.
It's been in place for about 60 days.
Jim Penny, you're next.
Thank you very much. I would feel much more comfortable if either we, based on what Andy is saying, post that it's been extended or we have an extension. I know that on the SBA loan that was discussed on or during many meetings, or I would much prefer a letter from the county, whomsoever is the responsible party, saying that we've been granted an extension based upon the circumstances, particularly with regard to the Kapuka out there.
Jim, that's all in the grant. That's all written into the grant.
The grant clearly says that if the funds aren't spent by June 30th, it has to be completely repaid.
Yeah, no, you need to read the entire grant in its entirety. It's a fairly exhaustive legal document, and the grant has segments. So anyway, but we can certainly get that clarified. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
you bet. Oh, hey, by the way, you asked about the SBA loan. The SBA loan has no applicability at this point. We still have about 4 more months on the latest extension of the SBA loan that we can reapply for it again or reopen it again. No money's been dispersed, no money's been awarded, no money's been received by the LCA, and we're hoping we won't need it.
Well, it would be great if the bids come back to be less than the 337.5 or whatever we have. If not,
375,000.
less the 10% though, or 10,000, whatever. So hopefully that would cover it. That would be wonderful. But if not, the backup is we do have the prospect for the SBA loan.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So anyway, does anybody else have any discussion on this? Okay, I'd like to make a statement before we vote on this. And I'm just going to wax a little nostalgic here. Way back in May of 2018, Leilani opened up and we didn't know what was going to happen. And some of us lost our homes and some of us were terrified that we were going to lose our homes. And lots of streets got destroyed and lots of lives got changed. And then a tiny group of people put their asses in gear and started working really hard to make it better again. There was people who got Moku Street and Kapono Street repaired quickly so that people could get back to their houses. And they knew full well that it wasn't going to be a permanent fix. And then there's other people who went to work with the county after grant money. For those of you who are saying, why haven't you started the work yet? Why haven't you started the work yet? We didn't start the work yet because we would have had to pay for it out of our own money. Through the work with the county, we were able to secure a $375,000, no strings attached grant, which we will pay a $10,000 procurement fee. The hope is that nearly all of this work, if not all of this work, will end up costing the LCA nothing, not 1 red cent. That's a big deal. $375,000 to a large measure would have taken the LCA treasury to nothing, absolutely to nothing, after 50 years of saving to build up what we built up. That single event would have started us all over at square one. Instead, what it appears we're going to do is to bring our roads back to every bit of the quality that they were prior to the eruption, make people's lives whole, make the situation clearly be on the path to recovery, and not have it cost the LCA any money. So I'm going to put out a thanks right now. First to Robert Goldman for the incredible amount of time he put in securing that grant. Dozens of hours. Some of you are thinking, oh God, here goes Andy again, bragging on about these people. They deserve it. Every single one of them deserves it. To Cheryl Kaut and Jay Chirkovsky for the time and energy and care and attention that they put in to dotting every goddamn I and crossing every T in terms of getting this grant. To Robin Stetson, who sat on the original roads committee. And Robin and I spent hours trying to get FEMA to get us money, and we didn't get it, but it eventually led to this grant. So to those of you who are sitting on the sides complaining about why didn't you do this faster and why didn't you do that faster, and you should have joined the goddamn committees. That's what you should have done. You should have been part of the solution, because if you're not part of the solution, as far as I'm concerned, you're part of the problem. And so to the people who busted their ass to get this grant for Leilani Estates, for the Leilani Community Association, who are the people who will be remembered, that brought this community back from the eruption and began the process of making it whole again, we owe them an incredible debt of gratitude. To those of you who stood on the sidelines and groused about things, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You should just be ashamed of yourselves. You're a disgrace to your community. So with that said, I'd like to call for the vote to accept the engineering proposal, which is our very first real concrete money spending step towards the beginnings of the Leilani Community Association roads being brought back. I call for the vote, and I'll begin by casting my own vote as yes. Robert?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Phil Denny? Sorry, you're muted.
Phil, you're muted.
Yes.
So by a unanimous vote of the Board of Directors, we very proudly take the first step towards the beginnings of the LCA roads, again, looking like what they used to look like, and all of our lives, for those of us who love this community, coming back in a big and important way to what it was before the Kilauea eruption. Thank you all.
Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Appreciate your comments. You have
The
one more
third thing going forward is the reserve study. So the LCA operated for 50 years with no reserve study. It worked pretty good. Train was on the track. Money came in, money went out, the savings went up a little bit. 20 years ago, the roads needed to be repaved. So there was a special assessment done. Lots kicked in $600 a pop. A little over $1 million was raised, $1.09 million was raised. And then we kept putting some money in savings accounts. We didn't know which ones were reserves and which ones were savings. And it was a little, but it worked. It was fine. You know, train stayed on the track. And then along came, and I won't go through it again, I promise you all, along came the Kilauea eruption, and the train fell off the track. And so this board decided, you know, it's time for a reserve study. Let's find out what it's really going to, how should we really plan in a founded, financially sound way to make Leilani a strong, fiduciarily responsible to its members community for the foreseeable future. Communities that are well-run do not do special assessments. Special assessments are a cruel and unusual punishment. What they are is, it's 20 years of people not putting money away, and then whoever happens to live there 20 years later suddenly has to throw in a whole bunch of money to cover up for what didn't happen for those 20 years. So we brought in, we got bids from 3 reserve study companies, all of them good, reputable companies. We chose one of them partly based upon the cost. They were the second lowest, only by $20 above the lowest. but we definitely felt like they were the most qualified. It was the McCaffrey firm out of Encinitas, California. We hired them. The principal for the company, Mr. McCaffrey, came here and met with, we asked for volunteers to meet with the reserve study company. We got one volunteer. Lo and behold, it was once again Jay Cherkovsky. And Jay and I met with Mr. McCaffrey from the reserve study company. They put together an exhaustive report. I mentioned it at last month's board meeting, and I posted it on the LCA website. I'm sure that all of you have had a chance to read the 56 pages of the reserve study. But here we go. For those of you who don't quite remember what you read, here's what it says. Our reserve funding is terrible. We have a 14% of our needs in reserve. The absolute minimum that a well-run homeowners association should have in its reserve is a 70% reserve. 80% is much preferred. There are actually associations out there with 100% funding. So how do you get that 100% funding? There's only one way to get it, and you get it with your annual assessments. I put together some spreadsheets. I sent them out to the board. I hope you board members have had a chance to run the Excel, where I did various scenarios of what if scenarios. I'm a math major, so that's the way my brain works. But what if the dues were this? What if the dues were that? What if the pay rate was this? Right now, by the way, we're at 82% pay rate. We collect 82% of the dues that we should collect. We have $68,000 in past due dues that's aged at more than 6 years. That's called bad debt. And yet we carry it as an account receivable, as if out of the clear blue sky, those complete slacker lowlifes are going to suddenly show up at our office with a $68,000 check. Anyway, we know who pays the dues. The people who pay the dues are the ones who are at this meeting right now. Why? Because they care about their association. They're people who actually enjoy living in a safe and good-looking community. So I did lots of scenarios. Our dues have increased from $15 a year in 1969 to $200 a year in the year 2020. Up until we had the $90 increase last year, the dues increased at the rate of 4.15% per year, $15 to $110. That's the good news. The bad news is the inflation rate was about 2.6% during that time. So we stayed a little bit above inflation, but not much. Hence, we now have a 14% funding of our appropriate reserves. Our appropriate reserves, so that we're ready to pave the roads at the time that they do it, is about $4 million. That's what we should have in the bank at any given moment, so that when expenses like new tractors and roofs for buildings and mostly roads come due, we just simply say, great, let's do it. And there's not a lot of financial anguish over it. We could get to that $4 million very quickly by setting the dues for next year at $653. The shit that would hit the fan, I don't even want to think about it. I don't even want to think about what that would do. So what I propose is a dues increase. We have to choose a new dues structure for the year 2021. If we increase the dues at a rate of 7.91%, call it 8, for the next 20 years, factoring in inflation, for those of you who like this kind of thing, I have all the spreadsheets. I'm more than happy to. I actually enjoy talking with people about spreadsheets. Talk about a strange relationship with life. Anyway, if we were to raise the dues an approximate 8% a year for the next 20 years, we will have, in round numbers, and assuming we don't expend it along the way, approximately $4 million in the LCA bank account. which will be by that time defined as a reserve account. We're establishing that right now, a real honest to goodness reserve account, not just strangely named savings accounts. So I propose tonight that we raise the dues in the year 2021 by $20 to $220. If that kind of a structure is maintained moving into the future, what we will create is a legacy for the homeowners 20 years from now, that we will have carried our weight and done our job to prepare the community for the financial future that it should have. I make a motion tonight that the dues for 2021 be raised by 10% to $220 in the pursuit of a stable, fiduciarily sound Leilani Community Association in the year 2040. I ask for a second on it.
I second it.
Thank you. And I now open for discussion from both the board and the floor.
Andy, is part of your thinking that we would be looking at repaving the roads sometime in the next 20 years? So that would be something that the reserve fund would make okay. And I can't imagine how much they'd have to charge people individually if they did it with a special assessment.
Alice, what the fellow from the McCaffrey Reserve Study said, he said he was quite impressed. He said, whoever did the paving here did a fabulous job of it, really good. He said, it's remarkable that 20 years on that your roads look as good as they do. But for those of us who have been here a while, we all know that the grass is starting to grow through the cracks. And so it's just a matter of time before the roads either have to be repaved or recoated. Recoating buys time, repaving buys you a lot more time. But the short answer to your question is yes, at some point the roads will require a repair, and that repair will cost a fairly large amount of money.
Okay. Jim Penny, you're up next.
Thank you. Two comments. One, Andy, I think your comment about the 653 or whatever it was, and hitting the fan was absolutely on target. So having said that, I'll go down to the 220. What you said is after the 20 years or whatever, if I heard right,
yes,
then we would call that a reserve fund. My issue is,
Jimmy, let me just respond to that. No, it becomes a reserve fund immediately, but it grows to that dollar amount.
okay, so then my concern is of the proposed $20 increase, how do we allocate that amount of money? Because otherwise we could just run up the expenses and suddenly we spend it all.
You
So
bet.
can we set aside $20 and dedicate it to go into a specific account?
Yes, either this board or some future board would pass a policy by which a particular dollar amount would be charged to the reserve account, and removing money from that reserve account is extremely restricted by that same policy, which says that it cannot be spent for day-to-day expenses or normal operating expenses. It is only available for the very few things which fall under the purview of a reserve study, which to a large measure you could think of as the big ticket costs of an association.
And thus the amount of money that we currently have would also go into that?
Oh, great question, and I skipped over that. Thank you. The reserve study company that we hired arbitrarily, but with some experience, said that what they felt, based upon our current financial state, that we have $260,000 of money that we could right now shift to a definition of reserves, and that would still give us the correct operating capital and operating reserve to moving that $260,000 would be a safe thing to do. My proposal would be that we wait 1 year to make that definition of the 260 so that we can watch the spending play out for a year, because once that money goes into the reserve fund, it's hard to get it back. It's kind of like your 401k. It's a little hard to get back out again.
I agree with everything you just said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Richard Skidmore is next. Richard?
Hi, quick question. The $4 million that you put out there, is that for repaving all of the roads, including the lava covered roads, or just the ones that are existing now?
I think the thought of paving the lava covered roads is ludicrous. So I won't even deem that one with an answer. But so of course it's only the roads that are currently paved, and the projected cost at 20 years out for paving what we did the last time would be about $5.4 million. But there's been a lot of road which will not get repaved again. So the 4 million is a little bit seat of the ass guesstimate, but it also includes other expenditures which are included in the reserve study, such as the pavilion is at some point going to need a fairly large repair. It's actually dangerous right now. A good hurricane, I think an engineer would be afraid the pavilion would come down. And then the other thing that's going to be an ongoing expenditure for the LCA is our tractors. We wear them out at a pretty furious pace. And the case tractor that we have, the last time we bought it, it was $89,000. So probably the next time we buy it, it'll be $150,000. So there will be other expenditures above and beyond the roads.
So the increase to 220 would just go to the 1320 of us, or whatever the number is, who are currently paying dues, and not to the 2,000 plus that have lava covered lots.
Yeah, the correct number is 1,281 people that pay the dues right now, with an 82% pay rate. So we have, in round numbers, about 940 people who, I have some bookkeeping terms that I use that they're not standard bookkeeping terms. I call the people who pay the ones who give a shit, and I call the ones who don't pay as the ones who don't deserve to live here. And so that's the two categories.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Heather, you're next.
Hi, sorry. I'm speaking a lot tonight.
Hey, Heather, we like that. We like people who have things to say about the community. Thank you for speaking up.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're going to be very happy with what I have to say, unfortunately. I do recognize that we have certain minimum requirements in terms of financial, requirements that we need to meet as a community and as an association. But we do have to recognize that we are not like other places in the state, much less the mainland. We are one of the lowest income areas within the state. And I think we have to recognize that, that is the people that live in this neighborhood. And while I appreciate where you're coming from with, being frustrated with the response of people not paying, I think we do need to be respectful to the fact that, like, there's a huge socioeconomic disparity in our Native Hawaiian population here. And, that's hugely resulted from colonization that has taken place within this island, and led to the displacement of these people from their homes and their land. And so this idea of, dues and whatnot, like, is honestly a foreign concept that I just think calling people lowlifes is completely unnecessary in order to make your argument for why we need to increase our dues by $20. And I would like to ask that this board be respectful of our Native Hawaiian population, because they have gone through a lot. And they are by far the worst in terms of having to deal with the disparity in this state. So
Heather, do you mind if I respond? Your inference that me calling people lowlifes had any racial connotation is very offensive. I am a non-discriminator in terms of who I call lowlifes. To me, people who contribute to their community and are assets to their community are honorable people with absolute regard to race or any other trait that is involved with birth. The fact that people choose to be disrespectful to people in their communities has nothing to do with it. So I take great offense at any racial inference that you make about anything that I said, and I feel that you're entirely out of line making that comment.
I'm not saying that you specifically called out that population, but I'm just saying those that are unable to afford paying for these things, then they may not have a choice in the matter. You know, this is a product of the socioeconomic disparity that exists within our community and that preferentially affects our Native Hawaiian population. That is all I'm asking as someone who is Native Hawaiian and who, honestly, whose father was not able to pay the dues for this association. So I do take it personally. And so I do ask that you please just be mindful of the fact that when you are saying that people don't have a choice or that people have a choice, you have to be mindful of the fact that sometimes they don't have a choice. And
Heather, I personally, along with a few other people, established a fund last year entirely funded by contributions of people from this community to help people, anybody who asked for it, to pay their dues. People who sat on this board and people who are at this meeting tonight contributed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to that fund for the express purpose of aiding people in this community who are in a lower socioeconomic status than others, in the complete and clear acknowledgement that there are people who are just simply dealt tough cards in life. Never, ever would we ignore that need and not rise to meet that need. However, there are a clear understanding when you move into an incorporated community that there are requirements that have to be met. There are thousands of unincorporated housing opportunities on this island that people can live in with no dues and with no membership requirement. So while as I respect what you're saying and I hear what you're saying, and probably to a large measure, I agree with what you're saying, I think that for you to cast it in light of the fact that there's simply a kind of a heartless attitude being expressed, I think you're out of line.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to change the due structure from $200 per year to $220 per year. And I'll ask now, is there any further discussion on that subject?
Phil, do you want to
Okay.
speak? Phil, go ahead. Phil, you're muted, Phil. You have to unmute yourself.
I apologize. Andy, you said that this is predicated on an 8% increase per year for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
Hold on, I just actually muted Phil Denny by accident. Hold on one second, please. Hold on.
I'm sorry. It's so if this is an 8% increase per year for 20 years, what are the dues at the end of 20 years, Andy?
Hold on a second, I'll tell you. I have it worked. I actually have it at the 7.91, so it'll be slightly different. $917.
Per lot per year at the end of 20 years to
Yes, sir.
achieve our reserve fund of $4 million.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, that's a good question, by the way. The current dues accelerated for inflation. If we were to do no increase from the current dues at the accelerated rate for 20 years would be $465. So we've gone about double the rate that we would go by an accelerated inflation.
Robert, may I ask a question? I can't raise my hand.
Okay, Lee, go ahead.
How do we know this reserve study is correct?
Andy can answer that question.
Yeah, you bet. I don't know. How do you know that your heart surgeon knows what he's doing? He's a professional reserve study. He's done 15,000 reserves. He's done them on, he kind of, Jay, would I be safe, Jay Chirkovsky, would I be safe to say that he kind of giggled a little bit when he got here because he does reserves for huge condo projects. He actually was doing one on the Kona side for a $53 million condo project before he came here. So I feel confident the guy knew what he was talking about.
Is there any reason why we didn't use a local company?
There's no such thing. There were two in Honolulu, and the one in Honolulu gave us a quote of $8,000 as opposed to the $4,000 from the company in Encinitas. I don't know. Is there any reason you didn't join the committee to help us choose the reserve study company?
Yes, there is reasons I didn't join the committee.
Okay, great. I'm just asking questions. That's all.
All right, so let's continue. Any more questions?
Andy, I got out my calculator. I've been keeping track of the numbers you're talking about, and I really appreciate the thought that people who live here and use the roads keep paying for them on a regular basis, because let's say in 20 years, a young couple moves in here, their very first low income job. And I calculated based on the number for repaving would be stuck with a bill for $4,166 just when they showed up here. And I feel like the spreading the responsibility is really the kindest and most reasonable thing to do.
It's actually more than that, Alice. There have been associations that have been sued for fiduciary irresponsibility because of exactly what you said, that a brand new resident moves in the year the roads get paved, gets hit with a $4,000 bill, and then sues the association for fiduciary irresponsibility for not having accumulated the money on an ongoing basis over the appropriate term that the monies should have been collected. So there's actually the implication of us keeping the LCA out of another lawsuit. We've already got 2 goddamn lawsuits going. We don't need another one. So Jim, I like the way you shake your head every time I say something. I'm tired of pulling punches on this. You know, things need to be said.
I wasn't disagreeing, Andy, so don't take offense.
Oh, good, really? Oh, well, hell, then I owe you an apology. There's so much stuff that gets said behind people's back. I figure it's about time it gets said at board meetings. So anyway, Alice, thank you so much for bringing out that that clarity on that. It's really well thought out.
Calculator. I couldn't do it in my head.
Okay, so
Andy, just so I can get your acknowledgement of what I was shaking my head at, I appreciate the increase to get to the money over 20 years.
Yes, sir.
But what I didn't hear factored in, it's almost assuming the entire increase is dedicated to the reserve fund.
No.
And, well, let me finish. Certainly over that period of time, our fixed expenses also are going to increase.
Yeah, you bet. So what I show on, we're running right now on, and these are real rounded off, so I apologize for that. We're working right now on about a $270,000 annual operating expense right now, just to keep the LCA running. Accelerating that for inflation over that 20 years will be at $406,000 operating expense. So the way that'll break down, that's a great point you made, Jim. Thank you. The way that'll break down is the increases will go approximately, and this is very approximate, 25% to operating expenses, 25% towards operating savings capital, which, as you know, Jim, as a financial guy, is pays for things like a truck transmission when it comes along, an unexpected expense. And then about 50% of the increase would actually go towards the reserve. Thank you for noting that.
Okay. Andy, do you want to call the question?
If there is no further discussion, I'd like to once again call for a vote.
Was that one more person who wants to speak? Sorry.
Sure, let's do it.
Ton, I don't know.
Yes,
Ton.
I have a question to the increase the annual fee. I'm wondering, other communities nearby, do they have how much, I mean, how much for the fee each year compared to the size? I have not gathering information, but
Yeah,
I know
Robert
I know
presented that
Mhm.
Robert presented that at a meeting many months ago. The one that sticks in my mind is Hawaiian Paradise Park, HPP. HPP mostly does not have paved roads, as most of you know, and their annual dues are $375 a year. Jay Travasky, what are the dues in Ainaloa?
175, and they're going up. I don't have handy the new number. Probably 185, 190.
Okay, and they have what percentage of the roads are paved?
About 80%. There's still 11, 14 still need to be paved.
Okay,
they have a lot of roads because they're 1 acre or 1/4 acre properties.
Right. Anybody else know any other dues that I don't know any other offhand?
Okay, so thank you for the answer.
You bet. You bet. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but because our Leilani is away from town, you know,
bet.
right? So do you use this as a location? You know,
Yeah.
it's away from town, and the depreciation or the price, the fee should reflect on the increase of things like that, because this year just increased tremendously, 100%. You know, that's my feeling.
I kind of agree with you, but unfortunately, things like asphalt and tractors cost exactly the same 25 miles from Hilo as they do 5 miles from Hilo. So unfortunately, as much as we wish that were the case, it isn't the case. The other thing that I would say from my personal short tenure here as a treasurer is I would like to have it that before the day I die on my little lot here, that Leilani far and away is the most beautiful, best maintained, best looking community in all of Hawaii Island. And so that's one of the goals that I have as a criteria when I make these proposals. But thank you very much for the input and the question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's call the question. Unless there's someone else on the board who wants to say something. Okay, Alice, you want to call a roll call?
I will. Robert Golden,
Yes.
Andy Andrews,
Yes.
Patty Hatzis-Deverakis,
Yes.
Philip Denny,
You're muted.
is he with us?
No.
Alice Lindahl, yes. The yeas are 4 and the nays are 1. Motion passes to raise the dues to $220 per year.
So I'll inform Kim of that change tomorrow, and Robert, that will be reflected on the 2021 invoices.
Okay, thank you. And Andy, thank you for all the amazing due diligence that you've done on here. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Alice, you're up.
Okay, this looks like about the last thing on our agenda. I'm sure.
No, well, Phil's going after you. So everyone, you might want to get yourself a cup of coffee because we're gonna run past 8:30. We need to get all these issues completed tonight.
Long agenda. As you know, as secretary, I've been working on the database to work out exactly what the cost of opening the roads in Leilani Estates would be in terms of the problems that might come up, and also just dealing with asking members to think a lot about what they would like to see for the future of the lava covered areas, the eruption site. And because the questioning has gone on so long, we actually did a second poll. And so I believe you will be interested in the results of the second poll. 70 people responded in a fairly short period of time, which was pretty fast. And I'm going to leave the poll open because we're always interested in what new people or what members have to say that have not weighed in yet. But before I do show you these numbers, we've been asked by several groups to poll the entire membership for all of the lots covered with lava and not covered with lava. And the board is prepared to do that. And it's part of the motion I'm going to make in a little bit. So we're not ignoring the folks who don't live here, but I will say I'm getting a real feel for the people who are really engaged in our community. There are these 70 people who answered these our request for another poll. So I'm going to try to pull down that and make it easy to spot. Let's see here. Robert is training me to do this. Let's see here. We gotta.
Doing a very good job, Alice.
Okay, we don't need those photos anymore. They're too depressing. But let's see. Here's the results of the survey. I just pulled them off the web this morning, and my husband thoughtfully made a nice chart, so you won't have to listen to me saying all of this. Let's give it a minute to open here. Like my screens. This is what my ohias used to look like outside my window before Rapid Ohia death. I hate how slow PDF Architect is. The number of questions were only 5, including, where do you live? So this was much easier to handle than the previous poll that had many questions. So a little bit easier to look at. And we still allowed a lot of opportunity for someone to not like our question and to answer what they would have liked instead. So I'm going to move this. Let's see here. I can't move that. You might want to move your people over so you can see it a little bit better. But of the 70 people who answered the questionnaire, 20% had homes or under lava, and 17% had lots under lava. And to me, this is nice. It means people who are not in our community anymore are still interested in us and still keeping track of what we're doing. 35% of the people who responded have had to do major repairs on their home, and the 24%, 0.5%, people such as myself and Andy, our homes were undamaged. So this means that even though there's fewer homes down there on Lower Malama around the lava and on Lower Kahukai as far as it goes, there's more of them interested in keeping track of this issue than those of us who are out here in relatively undisturbed properties. And I'll speed up here. The people who responded, 40.3% of them actually lived in Leilani, and 39% do not live in Leilani. They live elsewhere, and 21% are part-timers. And this is really encouraging too, because we're getting a lot of people who either had to leave or who have never lived here and just own here are chiming in, almost as many as the people who live here. And we didn't give very many choices for what the most important feature that they'd like to see about the future of Leilani. 28.9% said that they would like to see the roads reopened and encouragement and a capability of rebuilding if a person wanted to in the lots. And 44.8% are in favor of protecting the fissure area and leaving it as it is and not promoting building. And there are 9.4% who are either undecided or they're kind of half and half. And I think that this particular outcome shows us, the board, that we need to put a lot of priority in protecting the road, especially from the kind of stuff that I showed you earlier today with the vehicles racing around, chewing it up. And we also need to accommodate the people who would like to rebuild. So our final plan will incorporate both of those elements. And I just thought I'd throw it in because I'd never seen it asked before. We'd like to know what people think of tourism inside Leilani Estates itself. And 23% of the respondents said that they were okay with having tourists come into our community. And the 70.9% people, most of them said, or indicated that they're not against tourism, but they would like to have the tourists themselves be on the outside looking in and not have access to our private roads. The location of people's properties, let's see here. That actually reflects the same as the people who were joining from other places. Let's see here. 24% live near the lava, 32% live not near the lava, and 11% their homes are under lava. So once again, we have people who are not our neighbors still interested in what we're doing. So that's enough of that.
Alice, that's not percents, those are actual numbers.
Oh, you're right, they're numbers.
Those are actual lots, right?
Yeah, that's not a percent of 70. It's like, oh, so it's more than that. So these are the number of lots. Let's see, near, not near, under. Yeah,
right.
I had to use Jay's map to figure this one out, see how far away they were. Okay, thank you. And I think that I can stop the sharing there because I don't have any more of those to do. But anyway, yeah, let's get my right page here. Our study was going along pretty well as we were working towards finding out what everybody wanted, when the process was interrupted by the grading of Luana and the taking out of the barricade. And this created not only a new set of problems for us to solve, it created a really big liability for LCA, because a lot of that area is still volcanically active and it's not safe. And it's not really okay for us to be welcoming people to ride around in there and walk around there. And I talked to our insurance representative and she said that we have $1 million liability policy, but that any kind of claim made would, ability to pay out on a claim would have a lot to do with how much effort we went to make it safe. In other words, if we were conscious of the danger and if we tried to protect people from the danger, then our insurance policy would be would help us out if we were sued for someone being injured. I talked over with her, but mainly I talked over with other people. How can we make that place more safe now that it's obviously been opened up for activities and behaviors that we want to keep out of there? And as you saw in my little video, the opening to Luana Street doesn't have a warning sign. The signs that were there, the no trespassing signs, and the other signs were taken down when the barricade was removed. There's no signs about the hazards or trespassing onto private property. But mainly there is not a gate. What we have discovered with the other roads is that a gate itself will keep a lot of people out, even if it's not locked, because it makes a statement, and especially if some of these signs are on that gate. And We probably also, and the insurance company was kind of big on this. She said, you really need to do some studies to find out if it's safe to be walking around out there because of the volcanic features and also because of the air pockets underneath the ground out there. Anyway, so although we are not right now in a position to have a permanent policy because we have not heard, we were just barely sending out the letters to all of our members since so many people want that. But we do need to take some steps to protect the lava covered areas from incursion through Luana Street and maybe some of these other streets that have already been mentioned as well. We already know there's a lot more cars, motorbikes, four-wheelers damaging the landscape. And this is supported by a security cameras that we have mounted in little cave-like hidey holes there along the road. There are a lot more hikers going up Fissure 8, and the loss of peace and quiet during dinner hours and in the morning especially has been tough on the people who live there. So I combined these thoughts and talked to the board and talked to lots of other people in the community. And I'm going to make a motion that we take remedial steps to make the place safer. And in the future, the next board, whoever can make a permanent policy. But for now, we can't wait many more months and have more four-wheelers ripping that place up or anybody getting hurt. And so I move that the following steps to protect the LCA from increased legal liability and increased unwanted intrusions of residents near the lava must be done now. This action is necessary because of the opening of Luana Street and the removal of the barricade. The board will undertake, if the motion passes, the board will undertake these 6 items right now. First of all, erect a gate at the south end of the bulldozed portion of Luana Street and erect fencing to each side to prohibit driving around the gate. Now, in discussion, we are going to hope that we won't need to lock the gate and give Mr. Estes a key, that the gate and the signs, we have some signs going up, will be enough to keep everybody out. And if we find that it doesn't, we're going to have to readdress that question. But erecting a gate seemed like the most logical, an unlocked gate, logical first step. We replace all the no trespassing signs that are removed and private property signs and signs that describe a dangerous and unstable surface on the terrain ahead. And those signs have we've already designed those. And we would like to create, and this is, I think, probably the most important one in here, a standing committee of LCA members who will advise the board of problems associated with the lava area as they arise and explore solutions to the problem. And it would be quite a burden on the next board to constantly be having to run down there and take pictures of guys on motorcycles and such. But I think a board of dedicated LCA members would just be a great asset, and it would be a permanent long-term board. And things are probably going to come up out there that we have never even thought of. So we'll be needing something like that. We're going to write a letter to each LCA member and ask their opinion on the future development of the lava covered areas and take those responses and get those back in a few months, I hope, maybe shorter. When the response from the whole membership is in, the board will create a policy that has elements for protection of the area, as well as opportunities for members to build a home on their property, as long as they follow the county permitting and LCA CCNR guidelines. So that's the statement of the motion. And I'm wondering if anybody would like to offer a second.
Yeah, I'll offer the second, Alice.
Okay, Andy seconds it.
And Alice, you had said there were 6 items. You only read 5.
Oh, I think I collapsed a couple of the items. I'll change that to read 5 items. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had the signs in 2 different things. I thought I'll put all the signs all in one thing. So thank you for pointing that out. Any discussion on this proposal or any clarification that you are thinking about?
Yes, Alice, this is Phil Denny, if I may speak. I think the thing that's missing in all of this discussion is the fact that someone owns all of this property. This is not federal property. This is not LCA's property. This property belongs to individuals, all of it.
Right.
I don't believe it's the Leilani Community Association's role to protect or preserve private property. This is the role of the police. If there's a problem with people riding motorcycles on private property, then the police ought to be called. Our concern as an LCA is the roads, not private property. I am opposed to gates. I think it limits my deeded access to roads that I was guaranteed when I bought in here. I am opposed in principle to vigilantes controlling access to people's private property. So I'm opposed to the gates. I'm opposed to the LCA having a role in protecting or preserving private property, as beautiful as it may be. And I think this is an issue for the police, not the LCA. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. We have Mark and Jennifer. You're next.
Yes, I do have a comment. This is Jennifer. I'm wondering who is going to pay for the new barricades and the signs, since the ones that were up were perfectly fine and they were removed without permission. I do have a concern with the Leilani Community Association having to pay for that. I believe that the person responsible for removing them may need to pay for them and replace them. And I personally did see a 4-wheeler go down Luana Street and cut off into Fisher or onto private property this afternoon. So it is
in the spot that I found, that place right past.
It was further. It was closer to the base. They went off.
Well, we haven't discussed that, but I think it's a totally reasonable suggestion. I think that the barricades that we had were working to keep joyriders off, and this expense is due to the untimely removal of the barricade.
Mark Hanio, you're next. Mark, you have to unmute yourself, Mark. Hold on, maybe I can do it. Mark, can you unmute your computer?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. No, that was just Jenny's comment.
No. Mark, did you want to speak?
We were together. Yeah. No, we're done. That was
okay. Good. Well, Mark Hanio wanted to speak, and Mark Hanio had his hand raised.
I feel Sam Estes he's responsible for putting the barrier back. Yeah, because I spoke to him that evening when before he opened the road, and I personally told him he shouldn't cut this road open. Even if his property is in there, he has no business cutting that road open. If he wanted to cut that road open, leave that barrier in and just go around it. And now there's a lot of people on the outside are walking in. So I think the board should have Sam responsible for put that barrier back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Jim Penny, you're next.
Yeah, I don't want to extend the meeting. It's already gone on a long time, but it occurs to me that consistent with Phil's comment, if someone is riding around on a 4-wheeler, motorcycle, whatever, and injures themselves on private property, the owner of the property is responsible, not Leilani. If they injure themselves on Leilani roads, then it would be Leilani Association.
Jim, I asked the insurance person about that very issue, because people out there who are thinking about building are always asking me, and she said that Leilani would have the ability to make the place safer by the steps that they recommended, but an individual property owner doesn't have the option to do that. In other words, they can't make it safer and, you know, warn people to keep out. And somebody who is, and they can't put up signs and they can't make a gate, and they're kind of powerless with respect to making a very, making themselves, especially in a really tight, if say they're on a hot fissure and somebody manages to step into a hot fissure, they should have not been anywhere close to that fissure. I'm just saying, you know, what the insurance person said.
Alice, I'd like to make a
Judge will look at
response to that.
Mhm.
I worked for years for a very large corporation, and one of our well-knowns was lawsuits gravitate to the most likely payer. And so, Jim, to think that someone wouldn't sue the LCA even where they didn't have grounds to do it, and answering lawsuits costs thousands of dollars. In our case, so far, $126,000 in just in recent history. And so the idea, even if we were not ultimately held responsible in the suit, it would tie up a lot of time and a lot of money. And to Phil's comment about the fact that it's not our responsibility, it's the responsibility of a legislative body to respond to the changes that happen. And you're talking as if the eruption didn't happen. It's the absolute responsibility of us to be to continue to provide for the safety of the community. That's what it says in our charter, that we're to provide for the safety and for the, and I'm drawing a blank on the other word, but well-being of the community. And so to think that Alice's idea is to protect the community, the lava, and the people who could potentially hurt themselves out there doesn't have any conflict whatsoever with the avowed responsibility of the Leilani Community Association.
Thank you. I would just like to add that we've tried to find a middle way, that we're not preventing people who have property on Luana from getting to their property, which is putting a gate in to retard entrance. And Sam Estes did say in conversation, I believe it's also in writing, that if in fact a gate is needed, that he would help contribute toward it, toward the creation of the gate. So we're trying to find a middle way, and given the results that Alice had from that poll, it seems like almost the majority of people want us to play a role in terms of protecting the area. So I'm just want to support that. Robin and Jeff might want to speak next. You have the floor.
Yeah, Robert, I just kind of want to say that we support the board 100% in replacing the barrier and, you know, if necessary, charging Mr. Esty. I also want to put my 2 cents in that, you know, we're for locking the gate or even just replacing the barrier and just restricting entry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak before we call the question? Okay. Alice, maybe I'll take care of this since it's your motion.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Robert, I just wanted to say one sentence to
yes, go
Robert.
ahead.
And do keep in mind, I think Robert made a really important point. The gate is it's a try. We're trying to find something that'll work. And as to Alice's point, if a unlocked gate doesn't work, it could be escalated to a locked gate. And if the locked gate doesn't work, the barricades could be replaced. So by doing this action, it doesn't preclude more stringent actions in the future.
Okay, so Andy Andrews.
Yes.
And Patty.
Yes.
Okay, and Phil Denny.
No.
Thank you. And
I
Alice.
could have guessed that.
Alice.
Yes, yes.
And I vote yes. So it passes 4-1. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. I just want to commend you for this work you've done. You've been a real spearhead in terms of serving to protect our community.
I very much second what Robert just said. Alice has put in hours and hours on this project. So thank you, Alice.
Right. So
well, I'm motivated by the future, because I believe if 20 years from now, people who live here are looking at what is right now an incredible site, one worthy of national park, you know, kind of beauty and interest and scientific value. If we let it get trashed, it's on us.
Right.
And I would feel terrible about that.
Right. Well, thank you. Now, hopefully that will not happen. Phil, it's yours. It's yours now. The election and the community center bathrooms.
Well, thank you, Robert. I get to go last when everybody is tired and sick of this. I'll be very quick. Two issues. One is,
hey Phil, I'm not tired or sick of it.
Okay, I'll speak for myself. I have two things to talk about. One is the infrastructure, and the second is the election. I'll try and go quickly. Michael has removed the fence in the playground area around the stumps that were covered. The landscape has taken very nicely, and the place looks great without the fence. There has been damage to the newly replaced bathroom sink. Apparently somebody sat on it and it's been partially disconnected from the wall. Apparently Andy is talking to the plumber to fix that. Michael is in need of delivery of a load of 3/4 inch base course for the Moku Kupono maintenance. He does not want to pay cash as he's done in the past and be reimbursed. I spoke with Greg's Rental. A load of base course is about $425, give or take. Depends on how much the load is actually weighs and where he's got to go get it. My proposal is that we write and sign an undated check for $425 and allow Michael to arrange for the delivery of the material when and where he needs it. Again, this is below the spending limit that requires an approval, but I would like the board to agree to that and get this taken care of.
Phil, as the treasurer, I'll point out to you that the procurement policy that we passed gives Michael, without any need to discuss with the board, a $500 spending authority. So Michael can completely take care of that process.
Yeah, but Michael can't write an LCA check. Michael has to pay it.
Kim writes the checks, and
okay, all right.
And Robert.
So, all right, so that's what's going on. So when there's a request for payment, that's what it's for, and I would appreciate it if you would expedite that when it shows up.
Okay. The second thing, also, as the treasurer, we can't write an undated check. That's illegal. Checks are good for 6 months until they're stale dated. So dating it today makes the check valid for 6 months. Do you think that's enough? Do you think that's enough time?
Sure. I just wanted to bring that up because he related to me he wasn't comfortable paying in cash and getting reimbursed. And since we don't know the exact amount that will be due, we're going to have to estimate. And I would request that we estimate a little bit high. If it's more than it actually costs, he gets a bit of a tip.
One question, Phil, why can't the company we're buying the stone from, why can't they just build the LCA?
You're buying the stone from him, not from the quarry. He buys it from the quarry.
Yeah, but I agree with Robert's question. Why can't he just invoice us?
Well, that's not the way he's done business before. I can ask him if he would be willing to do that. And if you'd like, I can, but he basically deals in cash or check, doesn't take credit cards. So I just want to bring it up. It's just an issue. He needs.
Okay, but once again, Michael has that spending authority on his own.
Okay, all right. As long as the check gets signed in a timely manner, I think that'll probably work. I'll try and make that happen. Thank you. As far as the election goes, the materials for the election mailing, the ballot mailing, have been approved by Lincoln Ashita, and he has approved including the biographical material for the candidates to be included. He's also approved the assessment invoice to be included as well, with the caveat that the envelopes cannot be opened until the ballots are ready to be counted. It does provide a bit more of a challenge to separate the financial materials from the ballot materials, but that will save some expense of doing a double mailing. I would prefer a double mailing to keep the financial documents separate from the ballot documents, but I will leave that to the board to decide. The candidates forum is scheduled for the 20th of February at 2 p.m. Hawaiian time. It's going to be on Zoom. I've emailed Robert the meeting number and the password so that can be included in the ballot material. As we discussed last time, a tellers committee has been approved, headed by Maddie Green from Nanavale. She has two associates, one from Nanavale and one from Hawaiian Beaches. There are two Leilani residents, Cindy Helton and Ann Kalber, and we'll take care of the ballots counting on the 20th and certify the election. Thank you.
So let me ask you a question. You said the committee was approved. Who was it approved by?
The board. Last time we talked about it.
Oh, those people were approved?
I believe so. I thought they were.
I don't think any motion was ever made to that effect.
Okay, well, let me do it right now. I'd like to move that a tellers committee be approved by the board, consisting of Maddie Green of Nanavale, her two assistants, and Leilani residents, Cindy Helton and Ann Kalber.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that?
I have no idea who any of those people are other than Ann Kalber. And Matt, I know Maddie, but the other people mean nothing. I don't know. I don't know who we're approving.
I'd like to know some qualifications and why they've been chosen.
They've been chosen because Maddie Green suggested her two associates. The three of them have managed elections both in Nanavale, in Hawaiian Paradise Park, and Hawaiian Beaches. Cindy Helton, the Leilani resident, is a retired election supervisor for Stanislaus County in California, and Ann Kalber is a well-known long-term resident who I think is trusted by all.
I'd rather have you submit something to the board in writing. So I mean, this is just getting launched on us tonight without any.
And it's not getting launched on it tonight. We talked about this before. We've talked about this extensively.
So, Andy, do you have any objections to these people? I mean, you know Maddie Green, and do you have any objections?
But I don't know the other people. I'm just surprised that it was presented as approved, first of all, and secondly, that the names are just. I mean, it just seems like a strange protocol to me. That's all. They may be eminently qualified people, but do you know them, Robert? Are these people you know?
Well, I know Maddie Green, and I know.
Do you know them all?
No, I don't know them all.
Okay.
No.
How about
But
Allison?
I assume, I mean, given I know Maddie Green and she's working with these people, that she vouches for them. And that's why I feel comfortable going forward, you know.
And you spoke
I know it.
And you spoke to
know,
Maddie about that?
I haven't spoken to Maddie, but I
Oh.
just know, you know, and I know Ann Calver, and Phil just spoke about the person being on the election committee of some county in California. So, I mean, I feel comfortable. That's myself. I'm just talking for myself.
Of course.
Maybe we should hear from other people. Alice, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'd like to know why the ballots are being counted all at once. My friend Linda Wartendijk has done it in the past, and she did it by herself with her husband at the last minute, but they always counted as many as they could before in order to be able to not be rushed at doing it. And
yes, I'm sorry, Alice, I didn't mean to imply that it would all be done on the day of the election.
Oh, I thought that's what you said.
The process will be started. The plan is to start the process when the proxies are due, which is 2 business days prior to the election. So it would be on Thursday. So the process would probably start on Friday and then be concluded on Saturday. Lincoln Ashita was adamant, I shouldn't say adamant, but strongly suggested that the envelopes that are returned not be opened until the tellers committee had them to do, and not to be opened piecemeal. He suggested that when the ballots were returned, that they be stamped with the date and time over the envelope flap, so it could be clear that they've not been opened or tampered with. So the process would probably begin on Friday the 19th to be completed on Saturday morning the 20th.
I have a issue that came up before I moved here, and that is the ballot was always due at a different time than the dues were due. You know, they were due later. You know, it's kind of confusing, and I think, wouldn't it be better to put it in 2 different envelopes so that people
absolutely can... I agree completely, but it was proposed that in order to save money, that it all be sent in the same envelope if possible. And Lincoln Ashita said yes, that was possible, but the envelopes should be left unopened.
Well, you know, Kim likes to get the checks in the bank as, you know, as they come in. And so I'm just recommending 2 envelopes. I mean, that's what I would do. It's what, $2,000 more to do that? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. And I agree with you. I would much prefer that the invoice and the financial material not be included with the ballot.
Especially since the bill is due later. And I know I'm different than most people, but I always put off not writing my check until I absolutely had to. And that would like discourage people from voting, you know, if they weren't all that enthused about voting in the first place.
I agree.
Just a thought.
I agree.
I also agree that it should be 2 separate mailings.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, I would agree. It just seems cleaner to me.
Okay, so all right, so it looks like that we have a consensus to have 2 separate mailings, and so that's clear. But it sounds like we're still stuck on this tellers committee, whether or not the board is approving this tellers group.
From my perspective, I'm familiar with Maddie Green. I've never had any kind of interaction with her. Same with Ann. I know her from, you know, past board meetings, but otherwise I'm not familiar with the other people. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Why are we not using folks from Leilani the way we have in every year past?
The thought was to have a neutral third party to guarantee that it would be fair and clean. and there wouldn't be any question about the ballots and their counting. That was the idea.
I mean, the people from Pennsylvania count the ballots from Pennsylvania, and the people from California count the ballots from California. They don't send them off to another state to have them counted. Why would our little HOA not fall under the same purviews as state ballots or even?
Andy, I have no, I'm not married to the idea of who does it. This was just the suggestion that I followed up, and it made sense to me to get experienced people that were not related to the outcome or had any interest in the outcome in Leilani's election to handle the counting. I thought that including 2 Leilani residents would meet that need to have some Leilani control over it. I think the combination is a good idea and gives us the best way to get a free and fair, unquestioned election. Again, I think the issue about exactly who does it, I'm not married to one idea or the other, but I do think that we ought to make a decision about who's going to do it. I don't think the candidates ought to do it, and I don't think the members of the current board ought to do it. So we need to come up with a group that everyone can approve of. I thought this was a good choice.
Alice, you had mentioned Linda Wertendijk, and I know she doesn't want to do it, but how was she chosen, and what kind of people power did she need to get the vote done in the past?
Well, she did it pretty much single-handedly. So I think that 2 people ought to be able to do it, especially if they don't try to do it on Saturday morning. The last time Saturday morning was very hectic because there were so many last-minute ones, and checks were flopping onto the ground, coming out of the envelopes and stuff. It was really, I think 2 people, you know, working for those 2 days should be plenty. Linda could do it easily. And
what if we brought it down to the 2 people who are the Leilani? Who is it? Ann Calber, and I'm sorry, who's the other?
Cindy Helton.
And Cindy's a Leilani resident?
Yes.
I feel better about people that that I know than people that I don't know. I mean, and I know Ann is great. So
yeah. Well, you know, Ann's actually on the call. If she wants to pipe in, does she feel 2 people are sufficient to do the ballots? I'd be sort of curious to hear from her. But I know she's on the call.
No, here we go. Hi.
Hi.
Well, I was curious at first why the Women League of Voters was not brought in again to do it, if we needed a neutral party.
I can answer that, Ann.
Great.
Sue Irvine of the League of Women Voters informed us after the last election that there were people who actually almost frightened her to the point that she was so harassed by some folks here from Leilani that she said that the League of Women Voters would absolutely never be involved in another Leilani Estates election.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that Leilani has that reputation. I really am. Sue's a longtime good friend, so I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, we all are.
I want to be part of the solution, and I don't think that there is so many votes that we would have a problem, especially now that if we're going to have 2 and it's not going to be a check, putting the checks on one side and then dealing with the ballots. If we've just got the ballots, I feel capable. I would love to meet with this other lady. I am not familiar with her, but I'm willing to stand up, and I want to be of whatever support I can. I'm just following through and counting votes, and we can give you a total afterwards. So whatever the board decides, I'm fine with.
Excellent. And thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Hey, Robert, I would be fine with if Ann wants to first speak with the other woman and get her opinion on it. And then I'm fine with empowering Phil to get the feedback from them and to move ahead with them just based on a vote that we can make tonight, almost like a vote in advance to approve that, and then Ann will just get back to Phil with the final okay that the other woman is also okay with it.
Right, right. Phil, how are you doing with all this?
Fine. I just would like to see it resolved.
Right, right. Well, we can certainly go forward. We don't have to actually finalize this tonight. Sounds like we have a plan. And maybe Ann and Cindy actually might find a third person from Leilani to help them if they need the help.
Well, the only problem is that we know those people's names. So are we going to permit just an unknown person?
Well, no, they could tell us who the third person. I'm just suggesting this if they actually need more help.
Just that we can't vote on it outside of a board meeting. Well, as we could vote for those two women to be approved tonight.
Okay, well then let's do that then.
Point of order, Robert. Point of order. There's a motion on the floor.
Go ahead.
To approve the tellers committee made up of Maddie Green, her two associates, Cindy Helton and Ann Kalber. That's the motion. Okay. If you would like, I will modify the motion to change and make the tellers committee composed of Ann Kalber and Cindy Helton, with giving them leeway to get what assistance they may need.
Okay, so I'll second that as a discussion.
Yeah, that phrase "to get whatever assistance they may need" is too ambiguous for me.
Well, but what I mean, Andy, is to empower them to choose someone to help them should they need it, is all I mean. Rather than have to have that come back before the board to be voted on. I would trust both of these people implicitly to do a good job. I think the implication that they can't get help for fear of something, it doesn't really make much sense to me. That being said, rather I will strike that and make the motion modified to include Cindy Helton and Ann Kalber as the tellers committee and leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. I second that. Is there any more discussion on this point? Okay, so let's
ready to vote.
Yeah, ready to vote. Go ahead. You want to call off people else?
I do. Tell me how you vote, yes or no. First, Robert Golden.
Yes.
Andy Andrews.
Yes, on the second amended motion for clarity.
Okay. Patty Hatzis-Stavrakis.
Yes.
Philip Denny.
Yes.
And Alice Lindahl, I vote yes. Thank you for that discussion. I think that clarified things a lot.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Motion passes.
The last issue I wanted to bring up, it is, as I understand it, the mailing list is being revised by Kim Falsetta and should be available. Then we can put together the ballots. Robert, I don't know if you've arranged with a mailing company yet, but it looks like it's pretty much ready to go.
Right, exactly. It should be going out, I think, the latest on Monday.
Monday, great.
Yes.
Robert, you're convoluting two mailings here. The mailing that's going out is the invoice mailing, which I'll continue to take care of. I'm not going to be involved in the ballot mailing.
Okay. But I will need your help, Andy, though, in speaking to this invoice company in terms of taking care of this mailings.
Phil, I have a question about the voters in good standing. Who will be making the determination as to ballots, as to voters in good standing? That's a fairly ticklish subject.
Well, it's a great question. I thought that it was going to be Kim Falsetta was going to review the records and find out who was in arrears and who wasn't, and make that determination as she revised the list. Is that?
Okay, and as you certainly know, because of your knowledge of the bylaws, there's a very specific mailing that has to go out to every single one of those members not in good standing, advising them of that and giving them the opportunity to bring their account to good standing in time for the, have you made arrangements for that mailing?
Has that not been done? I thought that was part and parcel of how this financial situation was run. So people that are behind.
Phil, you're frozen. So,
just at the election time or what?
It spells it out very clearly in the bylaws, and I would have assumed that since you're very generously taking on running the election, that you would have been quite familiar with that.
Well, you would have been wrong. I'm not familiar with that. I have no idea. I thought that this was a function of the administrative people, Kim Falsetta. Again, I'm taken aback by learning that this is now a board function, and that we have to send letters to everybody that's in arrears before we can mail the ballots. This is news to me.
No, Phil, we can mail the ballots before that. We're just talking about another mailing to that people are apprised that they will not be able to vote until they are current with their dues. And that's a separate mailing.
Actually, Robert, that's not what it says. It says that they can also appeal their status, and then the board has to hold special hearings for that.
Right. No, but my point is, Andy, he was concerned that this was going to hold up the ballot. It's not going to hold up the ballot. But in terms of following the bylaws, people who are in arrears need to be informed and to cure that situation. And we can have those letters sent out. You know, I can call Kim tomorrow and we can get that taken care of.
Okay.
I have another issue that involves the good standing problem, and that is that quite a few ballots come in at the very last minute in the mailbox on the morning of Saturday, and of course the counters will need to be there to count those. And I've been there when that happened, and there were a lot of them. And somebody besides Kim has to determine if the persons are in good standing, because she doesn't work on Saturdays. And so there needs to be somebody opening the envelopes and doing that checking on Saturday morning. Does that make sense?
Right. So to give them a list of people who are not in good standing.
And one year my husband helped Linda because her husband wasn't available, and Greg Armstrong did the good standing check. And so we have to make sure somebody's there to do that, because there could be, maybe, I don't know, 40 or more ballots come in.
Can we ask Kim Falsetta to create that list for us, so it's available to the tellers committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Phil.
Good.
Yeah, Phil. You can do that as a board member. You have that authority to authorize Kim to do that.
All right.
I do have a concern, Robert, about the two separate mailings, which, as I said, I'm in favor of. But in thinking it over, this will be the first time ever that I know of in the history of the LCA that we've done two separate mailings. So what has happened in the past, as Alice knows, the checks and the ballots were in the same. And so what would happen is they'd be opened ahead of time, and Kim would bring people into good standing. Sometimes at the moment, people would mail in their dues payment, and therefore they're in good standing, and therefore their vote counts. And so what we're creating now is a situation where if we do the billing after the balloting, and people's intention is to come into good standing, but they're not aware that they're not in good standing, the order of receipt of the check versus the ballot will be in reverse order, and we will create the fact that they were all in the same envelope precluded that possibility.
So
Andy,
what do
you're
you,
brilliant. That's absolutely true.
so what do you, so
Good to
Andy,
her.
what do you suggest?
I don't understand. I know Lincoln suggested it, but what's wrong with what we've done in the past for 50 years, which is that the envelope arrives, it gets opened, the check gets taken out of it, the person's account gets brought current, and then the ballot is counted later. Do we really think that somebody in the office is, I mean, this to me falls in the same ludicrousness of the fact that the ballot for a president was rigged somehow. I mean, do we really think Kim is going to rig this election from inside the office?
Well, it looks like Lincoln does. I don't know, he thinks it's going to be rigged. He just wants to keep the sanctity of the ballot. And there's a way perhaps of doing that. We could have, it's getting a little complicated, 2 envelopes. One envelope could be for the ballot. One envelope could be marked ballot only.
Hey, Robert, excuse me. I have a person assaulting someone in the street right in front of my house. I need to go deal with it.
Please, thank you. Wow.
I always thought that would be the best when I was paying the bills, that they had one going in for one deadline and one going in for another deadline. But
well, then you're talking about 2. But then you're talking about, But why not just have an envelope? Say people stick their ballot in an envelope and seal it, and then the check can just be put in the envelope, with the invoice. Any thoughts about that? Any thoughts about that?
Isn't it easier for Kim if she has them both at once? She can deal with
Yeah. So
she can open up her
she'll open the envelope.
Yeah.
She's going to seal ballot, and she'll put in one pile, and they'll keep those envelopes sealed, and then she'll have the invoice, and the check or the credit card, and another.
And then she'll write on the ballot envelope then that they're not in good standing if they're not. I mean,
Right.
it's just to indicate it somehow on
Right.
the ballot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That would work.
Okay. Phil, does that sound workable for you, what I just suggested?
Again, I have no great investment in any way that it's done. I was just following Lincoln's recommendation.
Right. Okay. Well, I will call Lincoln tomorrow, just to tell him about the idea of we'll have a sealed envelope inside the ballot.
Okay.
Inside the envelope.
All right. I would like to call the question as far as the Tellers Committee consisting of Cindy Helton and Calbert.
Okay, I seconded. Did we vote on this already?
We did.
I think that passed.
We did.
Okay, I wasn't clear about that. So that will be the Tellers Committee.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, I think Jim Penny wants to say a few words, right, Jim?
No, I was only concerned, I couldn't figure out how to take my hand down.
Okay.
I was concerned about when will the ballots go out? That was my original question.
And then it looks like they're going to go out by Monday.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I had, Robert. I will get Kim to provide a list of the members in good standing, or more importantly, the members not in good standing.
Okay.
And that will be available to the tellers. I will follow up with the 2 tellers and Maddie Green to tell her that her services are no longer necessary. And I'll look forward to the ballots going out. Thank you.
Thank you. So Andy has some new business. I have no idea how urgent it is. He has his 990 federal tax return and he's not here. So I don't know. I guess we're going to have to table that to March meeting. So I just want to say it was a real honor presiding over this meeting. I just think it was incredibly productive. We were here till 9:15. Most of us actually stayed. We had 26 participants, so it's actually 21 people stayed. And I just really liked the way we worked out solving problems, moving forward, having a deliberative discussion. And it was, for me, a very heartening experience. So I just want to thank everybody. And I believe that the members who were in attendance here saw the dedication of these board members to do hard work, to do thoughtful work, to do professional work, and to get it right. This is no easy task. So again, I just really want to commend my board, this board, for what it's done. Thank you. And I'll now call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a record long meeting.